He kissed me at dinner and whispered in my ear, "Don't cry when you see the news tomorrow." But what he didn't know was that I had already been crying inside since the day before, because there are things we feel before we understand them, things we carry in our chest like a strange weight, without shape, without name, until suddenly, everything makes sense. And when it does, it hurts in a way that cuts deeper than any words could explain. It hurts in places you didn't even know could hurt. In the dreams you kept, in the versions of the future you built in your head, in the idea of who you thought you were when you were beside him. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. If you've ever felt this kind of pain, the kind that nobody sees, but that changes everything inside you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who has ever doubted their own worth, who has ever accepted less than they deserved, who has ever lost themselves trying to fit into someone else's life. And I want you to know that you're not alone, that we can heal together, one story at a time, that the wounds nobody sees also deserve to be cared for, embraced, understood. I lived in a small apartment in Mapogu in Seoul, the kind of place where neighbors hear everything, not because they want to, but because the walls are too thin to keep secrets. Every step in the hallway echoed. Every door that closed resonated. Every conversation crossed the partitions as if they were made of tissue paper, not concrete. The constant smell of kimchi jjigae from the lady upstairs, Mrs. Kim, a woman in her 70s who cooked at the same time every day, drifted through the cracks, mixed with the steam from my kettle, and somehow made me feel less alone. It was comforting, that smell. It reminded me that life went on, that routines continued, that the world didn't stop, even when mine seemed frozen. The neon lights from the street, red, blue, white, blinking in an irregular rhythm, came through the window like silent witnesses to my life. It was a busy street. Bars, small restaurants, a 24-hour laundromat, a convenience store where I bought ramyeon at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, as if the entire city was gossiping about what I was trying to hide even from myself, as if Seoul knew my secrets before I even admitted them. That winter seemed colder than any other. And look, I had already lived through 5 winters in Seoul, each one cutting, each one relentless, but this one was different. The wind cut my face with sharp cruelty, like invisible blades. It invaded the cracks of the poorly sealed window. I had tried taping the corners, but it never worked properly, and it reminded me, with each icy gust, of the emptiness that was growing inside me. An emptiness I tried to fill with him, with his presence, with his promises, with the idea of him, with the fantasy that if I was patient enough, caring enough, understanding enough, he would finally see me, choose me, love me the way I needed to be loved. And he was the only place where I thought I could still rest. Or at least, I believed that. I believed that his arms were a shelter, that his love was real, that I mattered, that when he said I love you, it meant I was enough, that I was chosen, that I was seen, that I wasn't just a convenient option, company when he was lonely, a warm body in bed when it was cold. I believed I was special, unique, irreplaceable. But the truth began to crack that illusion long before the dinner, long before the whisper, long before the news. It was on a Thursday afternoon, one of those gray afternoons where Seoul's sky looks like wet concrete, heavy, oppressive, the kind of sky that makes you question if the sun really exists, or if it was just a collective memory we invented to keep from going insane. I was lying on the couch, wrapped in a worn blanket I had bought at a thrift store when I first arrived in Korea. It had stains that wouldn't come out, but it was warm, and that winter, warmth was all I had. He had come to visit me after work. He was tired, he said, stressed. He needed a hot shower and silence. I understood. I always understood. I always gave space. I always molded my existence around his needs, like water taking the shape of its container. While he showered, I stayed on the couch. His phone vibrated on the coffee table. Once, twice, 3 times. Each vibration seemed more urgent than the previous one, as if someone on the other end was desperate for attention, as if there was an emergency, as if the person couldn't wait even 1 more second. I'm not the type of person who goes through other people's things. I never have been. I was raised believing that privacy is sacred, that trust is the foundation of everything, that looking at someone's phone is an unforgivable violation. But that day, something inside me, something that had no name, that had no logic, but that had the force of a premonition, made me reach out. My fingers trembled. My heart beat in a strange rhythm, somewhat offbeat, as if it already knew what I was about to discover. As if my body was warning me, "Don't do this. You're not ready. This is going to hurt." But I did it anyway, because the truth, no matter how painful, is still better than the lie. Or at least that's what I believed that afternoon. The screen lit up, and there it was, a message, short, simple, full of an intimacy that didn't belong to me. "I miss you. When do we see each other again?" That night was amazing, with a heart emoji, and just below, a photo, her, smiling in that confident way of someone who knows she's desired, of someone who has never doubted their place in someone's life. Long, shiny hair, perfect makeup, that kind of beauty that seems effortless, but actually requires hours of dedication. She was at a restaurant I recognized, a place where I had asked him to take me several times, but he always had an excuse. Too expensive, too far, too crowded, not in the mood. But for her, he had gone. My stomach turned. The air seemed heavier, harder to breathe. It was as if someone had placed a stone on my chest and was pressing. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need to read the history, although part of me wanted to scroll down that infinite screen of messages, wanted to know how long, how many times, how many lies, but I didn't, because deep down, the details didn't matter. His love had another name, another face, another place to escape to when he didn't want to deal with me, when I was too heavy, when I asked too much, when I needed too much, when I existed too much. I put the phone back exactly where it was, screen down, as it was before. I adjusted the angle, checked if it was in the same position, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just seen my world collapse on a 6-inch screen. The sound of the shower stopped. I heard the bathroom door opening, steam escaping, his footsteps in the hallway. My heart accelerated. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced my facial muscles to relax. When he appeared in the living room, his hair still wet, dripping on his neck, a towel wrapped around his waist, he smiled at me, a calm smile, carefree, that smile I loved, that smile that made me feel safe, as if I were the most important person in his world, as if he had just come home, to the place where he belonged, and I smiled back, because that's what we do when we don't want to believe what we already know. We smile, we continue, we pretend. We play the role of the person who hasn't just had their heart broken. We perform normalcy even when everything inside is crumbling, burning, screaming. "Everything okay?" he asked, coming to sit beside me on the couch. His hand found my thigh, squeezed lightly, an automatic gesture, familiar. "Everything," I said. My voice came out weaker than I wanted. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Everything's fine, just tired." "Me too," he sighed, resting his head on my shoulder. What a week. And we stayed there, him on my shoulder, me holding a secret that weighed tons, both of us pretending. But only I knew I was pretending, or at least, that's what I thought. The following 2 days were strange, surreal, like living in a parallel reality where everything seems normal on the surface, but underneath, in the places no one sees, everything is rotten, crumbling, dying. He continued visiting me, continued being affectionate, continued sending me messages during the day. "What are you doing? Have you had lunch? I miss you." And I continued responding, continued acting as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Every time he touched me, I thought, these hands touched her. Every time he kissed me, I thought, this mouth said things to her that it never said to me. Every time he said "I love you," I heard the hollow echo of those words. Empty, lying, convenient. I observed myself from outside, as if watching a bad movie, wanting to scream at the character, "Wake up, get out of there, you deserve more than this." But the character was me, and I couldn't wake up, couldn't leave, because waking up meant confronting, and confronting meant losing. And I was so afraid of losing that I preferred to keep living in the lie, until he invited me to dinner. It was on a Friday morning. He sent me a message early. "Let's have dinner today. There's something I need to talk to you about. A special place." My stomach sank. Something I need to talk about. Those words never mean anything good. They're never followed by, "I love you more than ever," or "let's travel together." They're always followed by breakups, by confessions, by truths that hurt. But I replied, "Sure. What time?" Because I needed to know, needed to hear it from his mouth, needed the closure, the confirmation, the final sentence. And in some sick way, I needed to see if he would have the courage to look me in the eyes while lying. The day dragged on. I went to work. I worked at a cafe in Hongdae, serving Americanos and lattes to students and tourists. A simple job, repetitive, but it paid the bills and gave me something to do besides think about him. But that day, thinking about him was all I could do. I spilled coffee twice, forgot orders, mixed up change. My boss, a Korean woman in her early 50s with a maternal manner, pulled me aside during break. "Are you okay?" she asked in Korean, her eyebrows furrowed with concern. "You look sick." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just didn't sleep well." She didn't seem convinced, but didn't insist. She squeezed my shoulder affectionately. "Go home early today. Rest." But I couldn't rest, because in a few hours, I would have that dinner, that conversation, that moment I knew would change everything. I got home at 5 in the afternoon. Dinner was scheduled for 8. 3 hours to prepare. 3 hours to decide who I would be that night. The innocent girlfriend who doesn't know anything, or the woman who already knows the truth and is just waiting for confirmation. I took a shower. A long shower. Too hot, until my skin turned red, as if I could wash away the pain, as if the water could carry away the weight I carried in my chest. I chose an outfit, changed, chose another, changed again. In the end, I wore a simple black dress. Nothing special. Nothing that said I'm trying to impress, but also nothing that said I've given up. Just neutral. Safe. I put on light makeup, applied lipstick, looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed tired, scared, but there was also something of determination in those eyes. Something that said, I'm going to endure. I'm going to survive. And that's what I took with me when I left home that night. Not hope, not illusion, just determination to survive what was coming. He picked me up by car, a taxi. He never had his own car in Seoul, said it didn't make sense with such efficient public transportation. Traffic was heavy, as always on a Friday night. The city lights blinked through the windows. The radio played softly, a song I didn't know. He tried to make conversation. I responded in monosyllables. You're quiet, tired, tough week? Sort of. He held my hand. His fingers were warm. Mine. Cold. Everything's going to be okay, he said. And I almost laughed, because things were already not okay. Maybe they never had been. We arrived at the restaurant around 8:30. It was a hidden place, as he had said. A narrow alley near the Han River. One of those places you only find if you know it exists. The facade was discreet. Just a wooden door with a small sign in Hangul. Inside, it was cozy, soft lighting, low, dark wooden tables, cushions on the floor, the smell of grilling meat and doenjang jjigae in the air. A perfect place for a romantic dinner, or for a breakup disguised as kindness. We were led to a corner table, private, isolated, as if he had planned this, as if he needed privacy for what he was about to say. We ordered food. He chose samgyeopsal and soju. I ordered bibimbap and water. He frowned. You're not gonna drink? Not in the mood. He didn't insist. While we waited for the food to arrive, he talked. About work. About a new project. About an annoying colleague. About the cold. About absolutely nothing that mattered. Empty words filling the space between us like cotton, muffling what really needed to be said. I watched the way he averted his gaze whenever our eyes met, as if he carried a weight he didn't know I already knew about, as if guilt had a smell, and he was trying to hide it. His shoulders were tense, his jaw clenched. He kept fidgeting with the napkin, folding and unfolding it, a nervous habit I recognized. The food arrived. He ate. I pushed the food around my plate, forming mountains of rice that I didn't bring to my mouth. The bibimbap in front of me cooled. The rice stuck. The egg got hard. The yolk, which should have been creamy and mixed with everything, solidified into an opaque, lifeless yellow. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You're not hungry? Not really. Want to order something else? No. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. He drank more soju. Then more. Then more. Trying to gain courage. Trying to anesthetize the guilt. And then finally, he spoke. I need to tell you something. My heart raced, but my face remained neutral. What? He took a deep breath, looked at his own hands. A story is going to come out tomorrow. About me. And someone else. Someone else, I repeated. As if I didn't know exactly who this someone else was. As if I hadn't seen her photo, her message, her heart next to the words. It's complicated, he continued. still not looking at me. We've been seeing each other for a while. I didn't plan it. It happened. And now there are people who know, and it's going to leak, and I didn't want you to find out on the internet. How thoughtful of you, I said. The irony was sharp. He finally looked at me. In his eyes, I saw guilt, but I didn't see regret. I didn't see love. I didn't see the desire to fix things. I saw relief at finally being able to stop pretending. I'm sorry, he said, and maybe he was. Maybe he was sorry for hurting me, but not sorry enough to have stopped. Not sorry enough to have chosen me. Not sorry enough to have been honest from the beginning. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw the plate, wanted to make a scene, wanted him to feel 1/10 of the pain I was feeling. But I didn't do any of that, because anger requires energy, and I had no more energy to give him. So I just breathed, deep, slow, counted to 10 in my head, and said, okay, he repeated, surprised. Maybe he expected tears. Maybe he expected begging. Maybe he expected me to beg him to stay. Okay, I confirmed. Thanks for telling me. He was speechless, opened his mouth, closed it, searched for something to say and didn't find it. Dinner ended in silence. He paid the bill. We left the restaurant. The night was cold, the wind cutting. We stood on the sidewalk not knowing what to do, how to say goodbye, how to end it. That's when he approached. He held the back of my neck with that rehearsed delicacy, almost theatrical, and kissed me. It was a long kiss, soft, sad, wet from tears, I realized, but not mine, his. He was crying, and somehow that irritated me more than anything, because he didn't have the right to cry. He didn't have the right to be the victim. He had made choices, had lied, had betrayed, and now he wanted me to console him? When the kiss ended, he pressed his forehead against mine, his breath warm against my cold skin. And then he whispered, his voice choked, "Don't cry when you see the news tomorrow," as if he was protecting me, as if he was being noble, as if warning me about public humiliation was some kind of kindness. His voice trembled, as if he expected me to break right there, as if he thought I wasn't prepared, as if I was too fragile to handle what was coming. But I was already broken before the sentence ended. I had already been broken for 2 days, for weeks, for months maybe. Every time I swallowed my needs to meet his, every time I made myself smaller so he would feel bigger, every time I accepted crumbs and thanked him as if it were a feast. I didn't cry in front of him. I swallowed the salt, the scream, the pain, bit my lower lip until I tasted iron, breathed deep, held everything inside, and said the only thing I could manage, the only thing my brain could formulate through the fog of pain. It's okay. But nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. Or at least that's how I felt in that moment. "I'll call a taxi for you," he said, already taking his phone out of his pocket. Always practical, always solving, always in control. "No need. I'll take the bus." "Are you sure?" "I am." He hesitated, seemed to want to say something more, but didn't. Just nodded, put his hands in his pockets, and turned. Started walking. Didn't look back. Not once. And I stayed there, standing on the sidewalk, watching him walk away until he disappeared around the corner. And it was there, alone on that almost empty street, with the cold wind cutting my face, and the restaurant lights behind me turning off one by one, that I finally understood. He had never been my shelter. He had been my storm. And I had spent all that time trying not to drown. I didn't take the bus immediately. I kept walking, without direction, without destination, just walking, putting one foot in front of the other because that's what my body knew how to do. It was what kept me minimally functional. The streets of Seoul that Friday night were full, people laughing, couples walking hand in hand, groups of friends entering karaoke bars, life happening around me while mine seemed to have paused. I reached the bank of the Han River, sat on a bench. The water was dark, reflecting the city lights like broken mirrors. Boats passed occasionally, leaving waves that slowly dissipated. It was beautiful, in a sad way, lonely. I took out my phone, thought about calling someone. My mother, maybe. But what would I say? "Hi, Mom. Remember the guy I said I loved? Well, he was cheating on me, and it's going to be in the news tomorrow." She would be devastated, worried, and I didn't have the energy to deal with her worry on top of my own pain. I thought about calling a friend, but it was late, and I didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to be the problematic friend who always has drama, didn't want to bother anyone. So I stayed there, alone, with only the river, the night, and the crushing weight of rejection. My phone vibrated. A notification, then another, then several at once. Ding, 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 ding. My heart sank. Already, I thought. It's out already? He had said tomorrow, but maybe the news didn't wait. Maybe the truth was in a hurry. With trembling hands from both cold and fear, I unlocked my phone, and there it was. The news was already everywhere. A gossip site had published it first. Actor seen in romantic mood with model at exclusive restaurant. The headline came with photos. Many photos. Them leaving the restaurant. Him with his arm around her. Her smiling. The two of them entering a hotel. A hotel. I felt bile rise in my throat. The comments were already in the hundreds. Thousands. He's always been like this. Fame went to his head and he forgot who was with him from the beginning. That model is so lucky. He's hot. Poor girlfriend. If he has one. Who's the lucky one now? Does anyone know? He never hid that he liked variety. Men are like that. People speculating, judging, romanticizing, turning my pain into news, into entertainment, into a pastime for people who had nothing better to do, turning the worst night of my life into consumable, shareable, commentable content. All of Korea knowing before me. Or rather, all of Korea knowing after me. Because in some twisted and painful way, I already knew. I had already known since that Thursday afternoon. I had already known since the message on the phone. I had already known since the averted gaze, since the sad kiss, since the whisper. I already knew. But knowing and seeing are very different things. Knowing is abstract. Seeing is concrete. Seeing is having to face it. Seeing is not being able to pretend anymore. My phone kept vibrating. Messages arriving. Friends who had seen it. Acquaintances being kind by letting me know. People I barely knew sending screenshots. Everyone wanting to know if I was okay. If I already knew. If we were still together. And the funniest thing, in a tragic way of being funny, is that nobody really wanted to know if I was okay. They wanted the gossip. Wanted the details. Wanted to be able to say they talked to me. That I confided in them. That they were there. I turned off my phone. Simply pressed the button and held it until the screen went black. Silence. Finally. When I finally got up from that bench, it was past midnight. My legs were numb. My body, frozen. But I barely felt it. The physical pain was nothing compared to what was burning inside. I walked to the bus stop, waited, got on the almost empty bus. Just a few night workers heading home, an elderly couple, a student sleeping against the window. I sat in the back, rested my head against the cold window. The rain started to fall, first thin, then heavy, beating on the glass like insistent fingers, as if the sky was crying for me, since I still couldn't. I looked at my blurred reflection in the glass, a smudge, a shadow, unrecognizable, exactly how I felt inside, blurred, out of focus, lost, as if the person I was before no longer existed, as if she had died in that restaurant, on that sidewalk, in that goodbye kiss. The streets of Seoul passed quickly on the other side of the window, stores closing, signs turning off, people running under umbrellas, couples walking hand in hand, laughing, living, and me there, alone, carrying a secret that the whole world already knew, carrying pain that nobody saw, but that everyone commented on. When I got to the apartment, it was almost 2 a.m. I climbed the stairs. The elevator was broken, as always. Each step seemed higher than the previous one. Each step, heavier. I opened the door, entered, locked it, and it was only there, alone in my apartment, with the smell of Mrs. Kim's kimchi, the neon lights blinking outside, and the deafening silence of dawn, that I finally collapsed. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since childhood, cried until I had no more air, until my throat hurt, until my eyes swelled, until my whole body shook. I cried for the lost illusion, for the wasted time, for the version of me that had accepted so little, for the woman I had become trying to be loved by someone who never really saw me. I cried because it hurts, because it's unfair, because I gave everything and it still wasn't enough, and I cried because deep down, part of me still wanted him to come back, still wanted him to knock on the door, to say he had made a mistake, to choose me, finally choose me. But he didn't come back, and that night, on the cold floor of my apartment, I understood. He would never come back, and maybe, just maybe, that was the best thing that could have happened. The following days were the heaviest of my life. Not because it hurt all at once. That would have been easier. It would have been easier if the pain came like a giant wave, destroyed everything at once, and then receded. But no, the pain was constant, slow, sneaky. It woke up with me in the morning, heavy like a wet blanket. It accompanied me in the shower, too cold or too hot, never the right temperature. It walked with me to the subway, sat beside me in the crowded car, whispered in my ear while I pretended to read something on my phone. Dragging myself to work felt like carrying concrete on my shoulders. Every step was an effort, every conversation, theater, every smile, a polite lie. People asked, "Are you okay?" And I answered, "I'm fine, just tired." Tired. That word became my shield, my excuse, my disguised truth, because I was tired, tired of pretending, tired of existing in this body that no longer seemed to belong to me, tired of carrying a broken heart and still having to function as if nothing had happened. On subway rides, I stared at the emptiness, not the emptiness of the dark tunnel window, but the emptiness inside me, that hole that before I tried to fill with him, with his presence, with the idea of him, with hope for him. And now it was there, wide open, screaming, impossible to ignore. I asked myself, at what point did I stop existing for him? Or worse, at what point did I stop existing for myself? When did I start measuring my worth by the way he looked at me? When did I learn to hide, to diminish myself, to mold myself to fit into his life? When did I decide that being loved was more important than loving myself? I had no answer, just questions. Questions that haunted me during the day and kept me awake at night. At night was worse. The apartment became too quiet. The silence was loud, deafening. The kind of silence that amplifies every thought, every memory, every regret. I would lie there looking at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint, trying to find some pattern, some meaning. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I just lay there, dry inside, without tears, without relief. And sometimes, on the worst nights, I picked up my phone and almost sent him a message. Almost. Because, deep down, a part of me still wanted to hear that it had been a misunderstanding, that he still loved me, that I still mattered, that everything would go back to the way it was before. But before pressing send, I remembered. Before was exactly the problem. Before was me accepting less. Before was me losing myself. Before was me pretending not to see what was already in front of me, and I couldn't go back there. So I deleted the message, locked the phone, and breathed, deep, slow, trying to find some air in that room that seemed increasingly smaller. It took weeks until I noticed something was changing. It wasn't a big change. It wasn't an epiphany moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was something subtle, almost imperceptible, like a thin crack in glass. You only notice when the light hits it differently. I was coming back from work on a Tuesday afternoon. The subway was packed, as always. People pushing, talking loudly, on their phones, listening to music, existing. I was squeezed near the door, holding tight to the support bar, trying to keep my balance while the car shook, when a woman beside me started to cry. It wasn't loud crying. It wasn't dramatic. It was discreet, silent, tears flowing that she tried to hide with her hand, her shoulders trembling slightly, irregular breathing. And for some reason, that touched me. I didn't know her reason. Didn't know her story, but I knew that pain. That kind of pain you carry alone, in the middle of a crowd, trying not to draw attention, trying not to bother anyone, trying to be invisible. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides my own pain. I felt empathy. I felt connection. I felt humanity. When the door opened at the next station, I got off. It wasn't my stop, but I needed air, needed to get out of that cramped car, that smell of people, that constant noise. I climbed the stairs to the street, stopped, breathed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something different. Not happiness, not relief, but something like presence. I was there, present, alive, and that somehow was already something. In the following days, I started noticing small things: the taste of morning coffee, the texture of warm bread from the bakery near home, the sound of birds before the sun fully rose, the smell of rain hitting the asphalt. Small things, insignificant, but real. And each of these small things was proof that I was still here, that I still felt, that despite everything, I still existed. I started avoiding social media, uninstalled some apps, blocked some pages, not because I was running away, but because I was choosing where to put my attention. choosing what to allow into my life. I started writing. Nothing elaborate, just loose thoughts in an old notebook I had kept in a drawer. Words that came out crooked, confused, without order. But that needed to come out. That needed to be seen, even if only by me. Today I woke up and the pain was lighter. Today I cried in the shower, but at least I cried. Today I laughed at a silly joke and remembered I still know how to laugh. Small victories, small cracks in the armor of pain. And little by little, those cracks started letting the light in. Winter began to loosen its grip. Not overnight, not from one day to the next, but gradually. The sun stayed a bit longer in the sky. The wind cut a bit less. The trees began to show signs of life, small green shoots, timid but persistent. And so did I. I started going out more, not to noisy or crowded places, but to places that made me feel something beyond pain. Silent bookstores, hidden cafes, almost empty parks. One Saturday morning, I went for a walk near the Han River. I hadn't been there in a long time. I had avoided that place because it reminded me of him, of the dinner, of the whisper, of everything. But that day, I decided to face it. I put on my warmest coat, a wool hat, and went. The river was calm. The water reflected the clear sky, almost cloudless. Some people were running, others cycling, couples walking hand in hand, families having picnics, and me there, alone, but somehow whole. It was during that walk that it happened. I was crossing the bridge when the wind hit my face. Cold, cutting, but not cruel. It was the kind of wind that wakes you up, that reminds you you're alive. And it was there, in the middle of that bridge, with the river below and the open sky above, that I finally understood. The pain didn't kill me. It transformed me. I didn't need his truths. I didn't need his explanations. I didn't need his apologies. I didn't need his presence. I needed me. And for the first time in a long time, maybe for the first time ever, I felt sufficient. Sufficient as I was, with my flaws, with my doubts, with my scars, with my story. Sufficient. The months passed. Spring arrived for real. The cherry blossoms bloomed. Seoul turned pink. Tourists invaded the parks to take photos. The entire city seemed to celebrate rebirth, and I was being reborn too. Not in the way I imagined, not in the way stories tell it. There wasn't a magical moment where everything resolved itself. There wasn't a new love that healed everything. There wasn't revenge. There wasn't him coming back begging. It was none of those cliches. It was simpler. And, at the same time, infinitely deeper. I learned to be with myself. I learned to sit alone in a cafe without feeling incomplete. I learned to watch a movie without needing to share it with someone. I learned to cook for myself, not because there were leftovers, but because I deserved that good meal. I learned that loneliness and abandonment are different things. Loneliness can be a choice. It can be peace. It can be reconnection. Abandonment is what I felt before, when I was with him, but felt empty. Today I prefer to be alone and full than accompanied and empty. I went back to doing things I liked. I started attending pottery classes at a community school near home. A small room with 6 wheels and an old kiln. At first it was frustrating. My hands didn't obey. The clay escaped. Everything came out crooked. But with time I learned. I learned to have patience, to shape slowly, to accept imperfections. And in a way, I was shaping myself too. I made new friends, people who didn't know my story, people who saw me as I was now, not as I had been before. And it was liberating, not having to explain, not having to justify, not having to carry the weight of the past in every conversation. I was just me. One day, a few months later, I was walking down a busy street in Hongdae when I saw him, coming out of a store, alone, with a bag in his hand, his hair a bit longer, unshaven. He looked common, normal, human, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not a desire to confront, not a desire to run, just indifference, a healthy indifference, the kind that comes when you finally let go of something that wasn't yours to carry. He saw me. Our eyes crossed for a second. He seemed surprised, maybe even thought about coming to talk to me, but I just waved, a polite, brief wave, and kept walking, and I continued light, because I owed him nothing, not explanations, not forgiveness, not resentment. He was just a person who passed through my life, who hurt me, yes, but who also, without knowing it, taught me that I don't need to diminish myself to fit into anyone's life, taught me that real love doesn't hurt this way, taught me that I am sufficient, alone, accompanied, happy, sad, whole or broken. I always was sufficient. I just needed to learn to believe it. Today, sitting here in my apartment, which now has plants in the windows, pictures on the walls, and smells of fresh coffee, I look back and see how much I've changed. Not because someone transformed me, but because I chose to transform myself. There's a letter I wrote to him a few months ago, a letter I never sent and never will send. Not because he doesn't deserve to read it, but because it's not for him. It's for me. And it says this: thank you. Thank you for betraying me. Because it was that betrayal that woke me up. Thank you for making me feel small. Because it was that which taught me to seek my own greatness. Thank you for making me doubt myself. Because it was that doubt that led me to truly know myself. You didn't destroy me. You rebuilt me. And today, looking at the woman I've become, I know it was worth it. It was worth the pain, worth the winter, worth the nights of crying and the days of loneliness, because all of that brought me here, to me. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you're happy, truly. But more than that, I hope I continue being happy. Happy with myself, happy with my choices, happy with the woman I see in the mirror every day. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not you, not what you did, not what you failed to do, but me. Me choosing to love myself, me choosing to respect myself, me choosing to stay with myself. Today I know that losing someone can be the first step to finding yourself. That the coldest winter always holds a spring. That pain teaches, but doesn't define. And that the greatest love of my life wasn't out there, waiting for someone to choose me. It was in here, waiting for me to choose myself. In Korea, I learned that even the coldest winter holds a spring. Mine took a while, but it came. And when it came, it brought something I never imagined. The certainty that I don't need anyone's approval to feel sufficient. Because I am sufficient. I always was. I just needed to believe it. If this story touched you in some way, if you saw yourself in it, if you felt something, if you're going through something similar, leave a heart in the comments. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because we heal together. We strengthen together. We remember together that we are so much more than any pain has ever made us believe. And remember, you are sufficient, exactly as you are, with your scars, with your story, with your doubts. You are sufficient, and you always were.